Carlos Alcaraz just schooled Novak Djokovic, and let's be real, age ain't nothing but a number. Despite the fact that Noel has been dominating tennis since dinosaurs roamed the earth, okay, maybe not that long, but you get the point, the sport is clearly entering a new era. And guess what? We might finally be witnessing a true changing of the guard. Right now, Jannik Sinner sits on the throne as the undisputed king of men's tennis, and quite frankly, it doesn't look like anyone is going to snatch that crown from him anytime soon. Meanwhile, Carlitos is back in beast mode, reclaiming his top form, reminding everyone why he's one of the most electrifying players to step onto a court. These two young guns are carrying the future of tennis on their shoulders, while Djokovic, yeah, that same guy who used to be untouchable, is starting to feel the weight of time. He's no longer ruling the rankings like before, but let's not get it twisted. He's still a nightmare to face in a Grand Slam. The Serbian legend recently sat down for a candid interview with Montenegrin media outlet Vesti, where he spilled the beans on the state of the sport. And here's the kicker. He admitted that tennis is in damn good hands. We've got Alcaraz and Sinner kicking off what looks like an epic new rivalry, Djokovic said, clearly acknowledging that these kids are coming for everything. But let's not forget who's been running the show for the last 2 decades. For the past 15 or 20 years, it's been me, Rafa, Roger, and I gotta include Andy Murray in this, Novak said, giving props to the golden age of men's tennis. However, he was quick to shine the spotlight on Carlitos, who, despite being just 21 years old, is already one of the biggest stars on tour. When it comes to personality, Alcaraz is in a league of his own. It's not just about his ridiculous talent, he's also a class act. He's one of those rare players who makes even his opponents respect him, and Djokovic couldn't help but tip his hat. This kid has already taught me a lesson about losing gracefully, Novak admitted. Yeah, you heard that right. Djokovic, the same guy who's had his fair share of dramatic reactions to defeats, is genuinely impressed by Alcaraz's ability to take an L like a champ. He loses with a smile on his face, which is wild for someone so young and still learning the ropes. And it's not just his attitude after a loss, his overall maturity is off the charts. People have been raving about the way Alcaraz carries himself, and honestly, it's like he's been on tour for a decade already. Djokovic has a theory. It's all about his upbringing, the environment he's in, and of course, his coach Juan Carlos Ferrero. Ferrero is a Grand Slam champion, and from the jump, he's instilled in Carlos what it truly means to be an athlete. Not just in terms of winning matches, but in understanding the values of the sport and being a role model for younger generations. And here's where things get really interesting. Djokovic went on to compare Alcaraz to the Big Three. Yep, you read that right. He sees similarities between himself, Nadal, Federer, and now, Carlos. But wait, there's more. The Serb also pointed out that the budding rivalry between Alcaraz and Sinner is giving him flashbacks to the legendary battles he shared with Rafa and Roger, while also throwing Andy Murray into the mix as an honorary 4th member of that elite club. Now, as Djokovic recovers from his recent injury in Australia and gears up for a return in Doha, one thing is crystal clear. The tennis world is changing, and fast. The new generation isn't just knocking on the door, they're about to kick it down. And whether Djokovic is ready for it or not, the Alcaraz-Sinner era has officially begun. Buckle up, folks, this is gonna be fun. Novak Djokovic, the man who has spent more time at the top of tennis than most people have spent in a gym, sat down for an interview with Vesti and got real about the passage of time, the new kids on the block, and what it takes to be a true champion. And let's just say, he's got his eyes on 2 guys in particular, Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner. These 2 young beasts are not just climbing the rankings, they're kicking down doors and rewriting the script. Djokovic even went as far as comparing them to the legendary Big Four. Yes, Murray gets his flowers too, reminding them that being a top player isn't just about smashing winners and collecting trophies, it's about carrying the damn sport on your back. Rafa, Roger, and I, along with Andy, who I have to include, dominated men's tennis for the last 15 or 20 years. We set the bar high as hell, Djokovic reflected. And I'm not just talking about results. We shaped what it means to be world number one, not just in terms of winning, but in every other aspect. Professionalism, responsibility, and the expectations placed on a champion. And here's where things get serious. Noel wasn't just patting himself on the back. He was laying down the law for Alcaraz and Sinner, basically telling them, "Congratulations, kids, you're officially carrying the torch. Try not to drop it." It's not just about the sport. It's about how you represent tennis, how you take on the role of an ambassador, a leader, someone who sets an example for the next generations. He added, essentially reminding them that being great on the court is one thing, but being a legend? That's a whole different beast. But if Djokovic had to choose the heir to the tennis throne, he made it pretty damn clear. Carlos Alcaraz is his guy. He was full of praise for the young Spaniard, who seems to be creeping closer and closer to becoming the next undisputed king of the sport. And speaking of players feeling the heat, let's talk about Alexander Zverev, who is basically sweating bullets at this point. With Alcaraz lurking like a damn shadow, the current world number 2 is on the verge of losing his spot. The guy just cannot shake the feeling that his grip on the ranking is slipping, and his recent choices aren't exactly helping his case. Next week, tennis fans will have their eyes on Doha, where the best of the best will be fighting for an ATP 500 title. Sounds like a perfect battleground for Zverev, right? Well, think again. He's taking a detour to Argentina, opting for the much easier ATP 250 event instead. Why? Because let's be honest, he's looking for a shortcut to a title, avoiding the biggest names in the sport in the process. That tournament kicks off on Wednesday, February 12th, with the final scheduled for Sunday, February 16th, just one day before the prestigious Doha event begins. Convenient, right? But here's the thing. While some might see this as a smart tactical move, others are raising eyebrows. When it comes to the real high-stakes events, Zverev has been looking more and more hesitant. And that hesitation? It's killing him. For all the years he's spent at the top, the German still hasn't managed to snag a Grand Slam title. He came painfully close at the Australian Open, but then Jannik Sinner came along and shattered his dreams like a sledgehammer through glass. After the final, Zverev let it all out, admitting that deep down, he's not even sure he has what it takes to win a slam. Oof. Those doubts aren't just lingering in his head, they're hunting him. In a recent press conference before his Argentina debut, he openly admitted, "I have to believe I'm good enough to win a slam," Zverev said, sounding about as confident as a guy trying to talk himself into skydiving. "If I don't believe it, then I can't prove it on the court." Yeah, no kidding. But even as he tries to hype himself up, there's a noticeable lack of conviction in his words. "I want to keep believing in myself and keep improving. Roland Garros is my next big goal." And that's the thing. He's still chasing his biggest dream. But here's where it gets even juicier. While Zverev is busy wrestling with his own self-doubt, Alcaraz is out there gunning for his spot. The Spaniard just pulled off a massive win in Rotterdam, proving that he's no longer vulnerable on indoor courts. That victory wasn't just another trophy for the shelf, it was a statement. And oh boy, did it shake up the ATP rankings. By clinching the title, Alcaraz snagged 500 ranking points, closing the gap on Sinner by a mere 1,000 points. And get this, he's now just 625 points away from overtaking Zverev for the world number 2 spot. Translation: Zverev is under massive pressure to win in Argentina, or else he's watching his ranking slip right through his fingers. So here's the deal. Zverev can talk about believing in himself all he wants, but the reality is that Alcaraz is coming for his ass. And fast. The next few weeks are going to be a bloodbath, and if Zverev doesn't get his act together, he might be watching his number 2 ranking disappear into the distance, along with his shot at proving he actually belongs at the top. Meanwhile, Alcaraz? He's just warming up. While Carlos Alcaraz gears up for battle in Doha, where some serious ranking points are on the table, another legend of the game is embracing a whole different kind of challenge: life after professional tennis. On Tuesday morning, Rafael Nadal, the 22-time Grand Slam champion and one of the greatest warriors to ever set foot on a tennis court, met with Spanish Olympic athletes at the headquarters of the Spanish Olympic Committee. This wasn't just another handshake and photo-op event. It was a moment of reflection, nostalgia, and celebration of a truly insane career. The man has done it all, and now, with his racket officially retired since the Davis Cup last November, he's entering uncharted territory: retirement. Or, well, sort of. Because if you think Rafa is the kind of guy who's just gonna kick back, sip piña coladas, and spend his days lounging on a beach, you clearly don't know him. "I'm doing well," Nadal reassured everyone. "Just adapting to a new phase of life. Keeping myself busy, as one should." That's right, no lazy mornings, no endless Netflix marathons, and definitely no aimless wandering around the house in pajamas at noon. For Rafa, staying occupied isn't just a preference, it's a necessity. "It's really important to have goals in life," he emphasized. "I'm someone who needs to have things to do. I can't just wake up and sit on the couch all day, I'd lose my damn mind." And honestly, that makes total sense. This is the same guy who spent decades grinding it out on the court, pushing his body to the absolute limit, and collecting trophies like they were Pokemon. You don't just switch off that kind of mindset overnight. Right now, for Nadal, this whole retirement thing is about careful planning, finding a new sense of purpose, and figuring out what the hell to do with all the competitive energy that's still pulsing through his veins. "This is a time to structure this new phase of my life, and that's what I'm working on," he explained. "It's still fresh. It's only been 3 months since I stepped away from the game. But so far, I'm adapting well." But here's the thing. Just because he's no longer out there grinding on the tour doesn't mean he's cut ties with the sport. Far from it. His passion for competition, discipline, and pushing limits is still as intense as ever. The man lives for sports, and while he hasn't exactly been itching to pick up a racket for some casual tennis just yet, he has rekindled an old flame: football. Yep, Rafa has rediscovered his love for the beautiful game. And let's be real, it was only a matter of time. Growing up, he was a huge football fan, and he probably would have been out there scoring goals instead of hitting forehands if tennis hadn't hijacked his destiny. But, as we all know, once his career took off, there was no room for side hustles. Now, he's finally getting to enjoy it again. Looking ahead, Nadal remains wide open to new opportunities within the world of sports. Whether that means mentoring the next generation, taking on an ambassadorial role, or even stepping into the business side of things, one thing is certain: his story with tennis is far from over. "I know my life will always be tied to sports. It's what I love, and it has shaped who I am," he said. "Now, I just have to figure out what's next. What truly excites me and how I can contribute in a meaningful way." For now, though, the Spanish icon is allowing himself the time to breathe, adapt, and embrace this new chapter with the same drive and passion that made him a legend. Whether that means chasing new projects, staying involved in tennis, or just kicking a football around for fun, one thing's for sure: whatever he does, he's gonna do it at full throttle. And hey, if you're loving this content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop a like. Here at Tennis Zone, we're all about bringing you the best coverage for the best audience. We dive deep into player strategies, break down tournament drama, and bring you exclusive interviews with the biggest names in the sport. So join our community and be part of the action, because tennis never stops, and neither do we.